Let's start with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. It takes everything Call of Duty is known for, fast-paced combat, intense firefights, and cranks it up to the max. This game isn't just about quick reflexes. It's about living out those high-stakes, cinematic moments that you'd normally only see in movies. Modern Warfare 2 is probably one of the most memorable campaigns in the whole Call of Duty series. What I love about the campaign is how well it balances action with quieter, suspenseful moments. It's not just non-stop explosions and chaos, though there's plenty of that. There are also these more thoughtful moments, where you have to rely on stealth, tactics, or just careful observation. It's a cool change of pace, and it makes those big, explosive moments hit even harder. Plus, the story is packed with memorable characters. You'll see some familiar faces like Soap and Captain Price, and the chemistry between them is fantastic. It's like being in an action movie, where every character has their own vibe, and you end up feeling genuinely invested in what happens to them. This campaign is really clever about mixing things up, so you're never doing the same thing twice. There's a little bit of everything. Stealth missions, full-blown shootouts, and even some sequences that almost feel like puzzles, where you have to think about how to use the environment to your advantage. Every mission has its own personality, and each one is designed to keep you engaged and constantly adapting to new situations. It's the kind of game where you never know what's coming next, and that unpredictability keeps it exciting from start to finish. Another big highlight is the attention to detail in the gameplay mechanics. Everything feels responsive and weighty, from the way the guns handle to the movement of your character. The sound design, too, is amazing. Every shot, explosion, and even the quiet moments are filled with so much atmosphere. When you're creeping through an enemy base, you can feel the tension in the silence. And when things get loud, they get loud. Overall, the Modern Warfare 2 campaign is like the ultimate action thriller that's easy to lose yourself in. Next we have Crash Bandicoot 4. This game is a wild ride that combines classic Crash nostalgia with fresh, modern twists that feel like a love letter to longtime fans and a great entry point for newcomers. It's a bit of a crazy platformer, full of vibrant, chaotic worlds, tricky jumps, and the kind of fun challenge that makes you feel like a gaming hero when you finally nail it. Now, if you've played the old-school Crash games, you know that platforming here isn't a walk in the park, and Crash 4 definitely stays true to that. It's challenging, sometimes rage-inducing, but in the best possible way. There's this huge sense of satisfaction when you master those jumps, dodge obstacles, and make it to the end of a level. It's like the game is constantly daring you to just try it one more time. And hey, if you're someone who loves going for 100% completion, this game has you covered with tons of collectibles, hidden gems, and alternate paths. One of the coolest things about Crash 4 is the introduction of the Quantum Mask. These are special masks you can collect that each give you a unique ability, like slowing down time or flipping gravity. They really shake things up and make you think about platforming in a new way. Each mask adds a layer of strategy and keeps the gameplay fresh. So even if you're 10 or 20 levels in, there's always something new to discover. The masks really give Crash, and Coco, if you prefer to play as her, a fun, super-powered feel without making the game any less challenging. And speaking of Coco, one of the things I love about Crash 4 is that you can switch between Crash and Coco pretty freely, which is just a nice touch. One thing I've got to say about Crash 4 is that it's a game that's as much about patience and perseverance as it is about skill. Some of those jumps are tough, and you will probably fall off cliffs, get smacked by enemies, and watch Crash take a nosedive more times than you can count. But it's all part of the charm. The game knows it's tough, and it gives you plenty of chances to laugh at yourself and get back up for another go. The developers added a modern mode with more frequent checkpoints, which helps a lot. But if you're feeling brave, there's also a retro mode that plays more like the original games with limited lives. All in all, Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, is just pure platforming fun. It's vibrant, it's challenging, and it's packed with little details and throwbacks for fans of the series. Next we have Resident Evil 5. Now, Resident Evil 5 does things a little differently than some of the other games in the series. It's not about creeping down dark hallways or fighting off sudden jump scares every 2 seconds. This one leans way more into action, and let me tell you, it does that action really well. One of the things that makes Resident Evil 5 stand out is its co-op gameplay. If you've got a friend to play with, this game is seriously a blast. You and your partner are constantly working together, covering each other's backs, sharing resources, strategizing against big enemies. And trust me, it makes the entire experience so much better. Whether you're playing as Chris Redfield or Shiva Alomar, you're both crucial to the fight. And that dynamic is what makes this game feel so fresh in the Resident Evil lineup. I remember the first time I played with a friend. We were yelling at each other, trying to stay alive, and it was chaos in the best possible way. Now combat here is amped up, and Resident Evil 5 fully commits to that action-packed style. You're fighting waves of infected, managing your ammo, using different weapons, and some of the encounters feel big and intense. I'm talking heart-pounding moments where you're surrounded, low on ammo, and desperately strategizing to make it out alive. The game's got this great mix of survival horror and all-out action that makes every fight feel like a scene straight out of a movie. But even if you're going solo, the AI partner, Shiva, if you're Chris, actually does a pretty solid job. It might not be as good as having a friend on the other end, but Shiva's there, helping you out, covering you when you need it, and even giving you items. It's nice to feel like you've got a true partner in this. Plus, you can improve your weapons, which is super satisfying. There's this sense of reward when you save up enough currency to max out that favorite shotgun, or make your handgun a little faster. It's like watching your character become more of a force as you play, which makes tackling the harder enemies feel even more rewarding. In short, Resident Evil 5 is an absolute must-play. Next we have Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered. This game is, in a word, awesome. I mean, we're talking about one of the most exhilarating open-world experiences out there. Right from the start, the game drops you into this beautifully crafted New York City. And let me just say, it's not just any New York. It's a New York packed with detail, life, and personality. You've got bustling streets, landmarks, and people actually going about their day. It's honestly such a joy just exploring, whether you're swinging past Central Park or chilling on the top of the Empire State Building. The world feels alive, and it makes being Spider-Man feel real. And that web-swinging mechanic, oh, it's a dream. There's this rhythm to it that you quickly get into, and before you know it, you're zipping through buildings, performing aerial tricks, and just feeling unstoppable. I've got to say, even if there were no missions and all you could do was swing around, it would still be a blast. It's that good. The movement is smooth, intuitive, and just fun. There's no other word for it. It makes you feel like a pro within minutes, yet it's so satisfying that you'll still be enjoying it hours later. And then there's the combat. It's a perfect blend of strategy, agility, and good old-fashioned brawling. You're not just swinging fists. You're flipping, dodging, using gadgets, and keeping an eye on the environment. The game lets you approach fights however you want. You can go in stealthy, plan out your attacks, or just jump in and start kicking. It's totally up to you. And with all the upgrades and skills, there's always a new trick to try out. Every fight feels dynamic, and the game keeps throwing in new moves and gadgets to keep things fresh. One of the things I really love is how much the game respects Spider-Man fans. There are so many little details and Easter eggs hidden throughout the city. If you're a fan of the comics, movies, or shows, you're going to catch a lot of references that'll make you smile. It's like a love letter to Spider-Man, and it's clear the developers wanted to make something that would do justice to Spidey's legacy. This is a must-play. Next we have Mirror's Edge Catalyst. It's a parkour lover's dream, wrapped up in a clean, futuristic package with a dash of rebellion. Now, the first thing to love about Mirror's Edge Catalyst is its movement. You play as Faith, a runner who dashes, vaults, and slides through the city in ways that make you feel like you're part of a live-action, first-person parkour movie. The game's mechanics encourage flow, so when you're running, jumping, and chaining moves together without missing a beat, it's just pure satisfaction. Honestly, it's one of those games where you want to keep moving, and when you hit your stride, the freedom feels amazing. One thing Catalyst really nails is how it lets you approach challenges. There's always more than one way to get from point A to point B, so it feels like you're making the game your own. Maybe you want to take a long jump over a rooftop or weave through narrow alleyways. There's freedom in how you tackle each obstacle. Plus, there are time trials and side missions scattered around the city, so if you're a speedrunner at heart, there's plenty to test your skills. The City of Glass, where the game takes place, is a work of art. It's a super clean, almost clinical, futuristic landscape that somehow still feels vibrant and alive. The design team went for a minimalist style, with splashes of color that guide you through the world, making every jump and turn feel like it's part of a bigger, sleek canvas. Glass is structured as an open world in Catalyst, which means you can explore its rooftops and hidden pathways at your own pace. Sometimes, it's fun to just wander and see where your path takes you, without even worrying about the missions. Speaking of missions, Catalyst does an awesome job balancing action with story. Faith isn't just any runner. She's part of a larger fight against the controlling corporate powers that rule Glass. It's got this great underdog vibe, where you're taking on a giant system as one person with a lot of heart and skill. There are, of course, moments where you might stumble. The combat can be a bit hit or miss, since it mostly revolves around close-range encounters. Next, we have Titanfall 2. If you haven't jumped into this game yet, you're in for a treat because it's one of those rare shooters that nails everything from movement to story. You're not just running and gunning here. Titanfall 2 turns you into a parkour expert, with wall running, double jumping, and slides that let you weave through the battlefield like a pro. The controls are smooth, and once you get the hang of it, it's hard to go back to other games. The map designs are built around this movement too, encouraging you to think creatively about how to get from point A to point B. There's something so satisfying about stringing together a perfect series of moves to outmaneuver enemies, and every match feels like you're pulling off action movie stunts. And then there are the Titans. If you ever wanted to pilot a giant mech, Titanfall 2 makes that dream come true. The game balances your time between playing as a pilot, the fast, agile soldier, and then calling down your Titan, which adds this completely new layer to the gameplay. Titans are powerful, heavy-hitting, and give you this awesome sense of being a walking tank. But it's not just a button mash fest. Every Titan has unique abilities and weapons, so there's actually a good bit of strategy involved. One thing that really stands out in Titanfall 2 is the campaign. Now, I know campaigns in first-person shooters can sometimes feel like a warm-up for multiplayer, but here it's a full experience on its own. It's well-paced, exciting, and even throws in some surprises that keep things fresh. The bond between you and your Titan, BT, is surprisingly heartfelt and genuinely adds to the story. BT isn't just a robot, he's your partner. The campaign manages to balance intense action with moments of humor and emotion, which is impressive for a game in this genre. In short, Titanfall 2 is an underrated gem that blends incredible movement, tight shooting mechanics, and a memorable story into one amazing package. Next we have Dragon Age: The Veilguard. Let me just say that the moment I booted up the Veilguard, it felt like wrapping myself in a warm, familiar blanket. I mean, who doesn't love a good fantasy romp? The sound of the character introductions, the sweeping landscapes, it practically oozes the charm of the Dragon Age universe. I found myself grinning like a total dork within the first few minutes. Now, one of the things I absolutely adore about games like this is the character customization. I think I spent a solid hour just tweaking the looks of my character. You can choose everything from their hairstyle to facial markings. I tried making a chaos-fueled mage, but I also found myself being drawn to this graceful elf warrior with a penchant for dramatic flair. Talk about options galore. Honestly, the character creator should get an award for being so addictive. And guess what? The combat feels so fluid and dynamic. Each battle had me on the edge of my seat. Whether I was charging in with my sword or spinning spells like some sort of magical DJ, the thrill was palpable. The tactical aspect comes back strong as well. I was constantly adjusting strategies on the fly. If you like the mix of action and thinking ahead, you're going to be hooked. The companions in the Veilguard are absolutely top-notch. I found one companion who was a bit of a jokester, and I couldn't stop myself from responding with my witty little comebacks. It's surprising how invested I became in their stories. They're all like your favorite friends who are ready to join you on an epic quest, minus the possibility of them stealing your fries. Plus, there's a blend of familiar locations and new realms. I felt like I was exploring both nostalgic and novel places, from vibrant markets filled with eccentric NPCs to ancient ruins whispering secrets of the past. The environment practically begs you to stop and take a look around. Now, I know we're all about the fun and games here, but the Veilguard also makes you think a little deeper about choices and consequences. It's packed with those moral dilemmas we've come to love from the Dragon Age series. Next we have V Rising. So, right off the bat, you start as a weakened vampire who's just woken up after a long slumber. Your first goal? Rebuild your power, avoid sunlight, and, of course, drink a little blood along the way. The survival elements here are a unique twist. since they're all woven around classic vampire lore. Staying out of the sun isn't just an aesthetic choice. Sunlight will literally kill you in seconds if you're caught out. So every move you make is strategic. You're ducking between shadows, planning your hunts at night, and it gives the whole game this great layer of tension. It's rare for a game to make you feel so vulnerable as a powerful vampire, but V Rising pulls it off in such a clever way. There are forests, eerie castles, haunted villages, and a lot of places just begging to be explored. And it's not just about sightseeing. As you explore, you're gathering resources and materials to build up your very own castle. Yes, you get to build your vampire lair. This becomes your home base. And you can customize it however you like, filling it with coffins, crafting stations, and all the gothic decor you can dream up. The castle building aspect adds this fun, creative twist to the game. Combat is another area where V Rising really shines. It's not just hack and slash. There's actually a lot of skill involved. You have a range of vampire abilities you can unlock, like dashing around enemies, summoning dark magic, or even transforming into different forms. It's fast-paced and feels super satisfying, especially when you're fighting tougher enemies. And there are plenty of bosses scattered around the map to keep things challenging. Each one has unique attack patterns, so you're constantly adapting and using different tactics. What's also cool about V Rising is that you can play solo or with friends. If you're into cooperative play, teaming up as a group of vampires feels epic. You're raiding villages together, sharing resources, and building a joint castle. It's part survival, part action RPG, part building sim, and somehow it all works beautifully. Next we have Persona 5 Royal. Imagine a mix of an anime-inspired high school life simulator, a classic RPG, and a supernatural heist adventure. And somehow, this game pulls it all off beautifully. What makes Persona 5 Royal special is its ability to balance two very different worlds. Your everyday life as a high school student and your alter ego as a phantom thief. By day, you're living in Tokyo, going to school, hanging out with friends, working part-time jobs, and even studying. Yes, there are in-game quizzes, but by night, you're diving into these surreal, mind-bending dungeons called palaces to steal the twisted desires of villains and, save the world. Another thing that sets Persona 5 Royal apart is the combat. It's turn-based, but with a twist that makes every encounter feel dynamic. And you get to summon powerful creatures called personas to aid you in battle. It's flashy, fast, and incredibly satisfying when you manage to exploit enemy weaknesses and pull off a team combo. Plus, Royal adds even more personas and abilities to the mix, which just makes the whole thing even more engaging. And if you're wondering what makes Persona 5 Royal different from the original Persona 5, it's like getting an expanded director's cut. You get extra story content, new characters, an additional semester at school, and a brand new palace. These additions don't just feel like bonus content, but more like necessary pieces that deepen the story and characters even further. The characters in this game are where Persona 5 Royal really shines. Every member of your Phantom Thieves crew has a backstory that's surprisingly deep and relatable. They're not just side characters, but genuinely feel like your friends by the time you're done. You've got everything from the artistic introvert to the misunderstood tough guy. Everything in this game screams style, from the comic book-inspired graphics to the jazzy soundtrack that's impossible not to love. All in all, Persona 5 Royal is one of those games that just feels good to play. Next we have the Callisto Protocol. It's from Glenn Schofield, one of the co-creators of Dead Space, so if you know that series, you can expect a similar intensity here, with a unique twist that keeps things fresh. One of the things I love about this game is how it creates tension. It's not just jump scares, though there are a few really effective ones. It's that constant feeling of dread. You're almost always low on ammo and health, so every encounter with the twisted, mutated inmates of this prison feels like a struggle to survive. The combat is brutal and up close, forcing you to really get in there and make every swing count. It's not your typical action game where you can just spray bullets and move on. Here, you're scraping by with whatever resources you can find, and it adds so much to the immersion and intensity. The combat is visceral. There's this raw, almost primal feel to it. The melee system in particular is pretty unique for a horror game. You actually have to get in close to bash these creatures, and it's terrifying in the best way. You're not just standing back with a gun. You're practically fighting for your life in every encounter, which makes the experience that much more intense. What really stands out, though, is how the game creates this balance between horror and sci-fi mystery. Sure, you're dealing with terrifying creatures and survival, but there's also this big, intriguing story underneath it all. Why did everything go wrong on Callisto? What's causing these transformations? The game does a great job of feeding you bits and pieces of the narrative as you go, making you want to keep pushing forward, to uncover the truth, even when every instinct is telling you to turn back. The environment is bleak and gritty, with this super immersive design that feels both futuristic and hauntingly decayed. Every inch of this place makes you feel uneasy, from the eerie corridors to the tight spaces where anything could be lurking around the corner. The game's sound design is another big win. From the hum of machinery to the scurrying noises that echo down hallways, every sound in this game is crafted to keep you on edge,